Here's a question that gets asked quite often, and I think it's an area that's often neglected as well. We don't tend to talk about this too much, and we should. My name's Sally Ann. I've been an SpLD assessor for over 25 years. Subscribe to my channel and be the best assessor that you can be. So what we're looking at here with these next couple of slides is how do you make your recommendations more individualised? And as a reminder, the SAS guidance asks us to undertake our recommendations within 2 to 4 pages. I've never seen anybody manage it in one and do a good job, but 2 to 4 pages. So if your current recommendations length is more than 4 pages, and that is common, we need to take a look at it. So how do we actually make the recommendations individualized? My suggestion is that you start at the beginning of this person's story. So you want to take into consideration all that background information that you've gathered, because that will pinpoint and highlight to you the current main areas of concern. And if we want the person, when I say person, I mean the child, the parents, the young person, the adult, the employer, the employee, the university student, whoever it is that we're assessing, we want them to move forward as a result of our assessment process and be able to access what they need to help them with their main areas of concern. So we have to start with the background information, because that is the bit where they're telling us this is where the struggles are, and that's the bit where we can come in with our expertise and address those difficulties. So first of all, background information, identify where the main areas of concern are. That's what we're looking for. Then we want to check those out by looking at what happened during our assessment process. What did the test tell us? Does it tally with the reported background information? It usually does, and it gives us explanations and reasons, and we can explain to them this is why this bit's difficult. And then we can consider why that matters. So we can look at the impact. We've found all this stuff. You said it was difficult. It is difficult. I can now explain why, because we've explored these areas. It's important because that's going to impact on the classroom, on the skills development, on their progression through education, in the workplace, wherever they're going next. So impact will capture, and then our recommendations will be truly individualized. How can we address this potential impact? Because look at what's happening for this person, and then we can do something about it. So by working in this way, it keeps the learner right at the center of what we're doing, and it takes us out of generic dyslexia friendly, this is what to do for all dyslexic children, people, adults, you know, because that's not individualized. They may well be relevant, but there are priorities and there are particular ways of working that will work best for this individual, and it's our job to capture those. So we want to ensure that they match with what we've seen within the assessment process and what their reported difficulties were in the first place. So that's kind of the approach that I would recommend that you take. Do remember your audience. We're thinking about parents, busy SENCOs, classroom teachers, employers who may not have much awareness of dyslexia. We have a non-specialist audience in the whole, and the bits that are for a specialist audience, like a SENCO or a specialist teacher, they're really busy. Let's assume that they know their stuff, so we don't have to go into masses of detail for them. We need to point them in the right direction, give them the links, and let them carry on. So remember your audience, make the recommendations relevant to the individual in the way that I've just described. Keep them realistic. If you're working with a school and you know they don't have a particular piece of software, chat with them. There's no point recommending something that doesn't exist in the environment. So have a word with them. What do they have in school? What is available? What could you tap into and encourage them to use with this child? it needs to be realistic in terms of finances, time, and access to the resource that you're recommending. Keep them individualised, linked to the background and the impact. Bear in mind the national guidelines, particularly when we're talking about exam access arrangements. You need to think about the documentation that explains all the regulations, if they're doing SATs, if they're doing JCQ related GCSE A levels, if they're going to apply for DSA, if they're going to apply for access to work, if they're going to undertake professional quals. They all have their own guidelines, and there are boundaries and things we can say and things we can't say. So make sure you're au fait with all of those that are relevant to your particular age range. And remember that SAS asks us to keep this to 2 to 4 pages. There's your challenge. But it is manageable if you cut out all the extraneous stuff and really go focused in on this profile, this individual, and the environment that they're going back into. Solve the problems, tackle the challenges, but make it so that it's relevant to your person rather than generic dyslexia-friendly recommendations.